Welcome to the first turn. I'm Hyena.
I'm Llama.
Today we're going to talk about some Warhammer stuff. We've got, kind of a good split of news this last week. We've got some, we kind of know what's coming out in the pre-order windows the next couple weeks. We've got some video game things to talk about. We got contents of the new starter box for 11th edition 40k to talk about. And a lot. So where do you want to start? I guess let's start with the video game stuff and kind of get that out of the way first.
Well, we don't delve into it too much. Creative Assembly, who's partnered with Games Workshop, obviously, to make the Total War Warhammer now for the last 10 years, they did a big event called a show and tell, where they were talking about games in development. And while they touched on some titles that we're not really going to talk about here, they showed updates coming to Rome 2, and then, of course, the progress on Medieval 3, which is a big one. But for my love, Total War Warhammer has been my favorite Total War game, and it's not even my bias for the Warhammer universe. I played Total War forever. Warhammer was just so good. It was so diverse, endless replayability. They've milked 10 years out of it. Well, they showed us that a couple months ago that we were going towards an end times event, which, for those who remember, Warhammer Fantasy Battles died on the tabletop game, and Games Workshop did an end times event. So they're kind of echoing that to signal sort of the end of new releases for the video game franchise. It doesn't mean it'll end support, but it'll end new releases. And the end times event's coming, but there's stuff they're doing before that. So there's like a big patch coming and a DLC that's going to follow an entirely new character called Bashiva. So Bashiva is this character who is known with the title of White Tiger. And a White Tiger, if you look at Warhammer fantasy lore, it's like very rarely touched upon. It's like kind of its own faction that was in the realm of Ind, for those who might be familiar with the Warhammer map. But here they decided, instead of creating an Ind faction and worrying about the mechanics of an entirely new faction, they decided to make it like a split of Cathay. Like the leaders of the White Tigers are loyal to whoever the guy dragon is for Cathay, Xiao Ming or whatever. And so Bashiva is the White Tiger. So she is going to be a new playable legendary lord that expands Cathay, gives you a new way to play. And she's going to come with a host of units that are White Tiger and some new human stuff. Mechanics and what she does specifically aside, you can go watch the video on Creative Assembly's website. I think the thing is still up on YouTube on their official Total War channel. She's super cool, and what she brings is super cool. But the biggest thing is like quality of life improvements. So for the Cathay faction, they're going to redo the tech tree for them, so it makes more sense. You're not researching stuff for peasants on turn 60 when you don't need it anymore. They're going to redo the lords and heroes, their tech tree, give them new things, like some of them will now be able to ride in sky lanterns as a mount, so to speak. So that was really neat to see. My favorite part of this segment, though, was they showed us one of the lords of the end times who will be available to play when the end times series gets started. So everybody knows that Nagash is like the featured new faction during the end times, but we don't know everything that entails. But one they showed off, I think a lot of people were excited for, because a lot of people play Empire over and over again. They're the most played, most replayed faction in Total War Warhammer. They're finally giving us Boris Todbringer as a standalone playable legendary lord and a faction.
But Todd.
So he's been in the yeah, Toddy. So he has been in the game since the very beginning of Total War Warhammer 1, and you always encountered him on the map somewhere. And it was funny because, like, he was always way too tough. Like, you'd have a whole army and he'd have nothing. You wiped out his army the previous turn. He's just all by himself. And you'd attack him and he would never run away, so you'd fight him. You'd jump into the battle screen, and then he was just there by himself. And he would just charge straight at your whole army. And he always had a healing potion for some reason when he was level 1. So after you thought you were going to kill him, he would also go, whoop, and then you'd have to fight him all over again. Anyway, he's finally going to be his own fully playable faction during the end times. He will be in Midland. He will lead a bunch of Ulrich-themed units. For those who don't know, Ulrich is like the not Space Wolf-ish theme, Nordic theme in the Empire of the Old World. And he's going to bring with him new units like Knights of the White Wolf, Teutogen Guard, Knights Panther, and other Ulrich units, including a legendary hero whose name I don't remember. That was really exciting to me because even though I don't play a lot of Empire when I play that game, a lot of people do. It is very popular. And seeing Boris Todbringer have his own playable faction in that northern kind of part of the Empire is really super cool for the what's coming for the end times thing.
There's also just so much territory up there that really, I feel like didn't come into play in a normal campaign, right? Because like you're playing the Empire, it's like, well, I hope Nordland and Midland can hold off against the chaos.
Yeah,
because they don't want you crossing the river.
You'd watch them randomly go to war with each other, and then there were the Norskins and Chaos would show up, and now you're fighting them. So it'll give a little more oomph to the human factions in the middle of the map, which is great. And so they showed us that this is coming, and they've really still got a good roadmap for the game. They're not done. The Lords of the End Times things are going to be like this, where it's like one faction after another. They just drop in. And then it sounds like Nagash will not only be his own playable faction, but he'll have the ability to have all his Mortarks under him. But then some of those Mortarks will have their own playable factions as well. So like you can choose as the player. But if you're Nagash, you can like absorb them. So that's kind of neat. The other thing they showed us was they gave us a progress report, if you will, about this where Total War Warhammer 40k is. And that's going to be interesting to people. One of the first things I was worried about when they said they were going to do this was that Total War has always been played on a two-dimensional map. Your campaign map was always just a great big flat world, and you painted it, as they call it, when you conquered, right? And so it was like, well, how are they going to make this feel like 40k outside of picking a world like Baal or Arcadia or Armageddon or these famous planets and just setting the whole thing there, and then it's just another Total War game? How are they going to make it feel like it? Well, the good thing is they got a bunch of nerds who are big 40k fans to work on it. And the first thing they set out to develop were planet types. And so, and that was things, they called them biomes. And so it was like they had like arid worlds, ice worlds, jungle worlds, desert worlds, waste worlds, whatever. And then hive worlds. And so they would define these types and then build the maps in three-dimensional spheres that kind of fit that. And then some are hybrids of them. So they actually showed that they have star systems, and then you go into those systems, and then there are planets that fit one of these biomes, and then you can fight, you can conquer, territories on each planet. And then, so it's like, this is going to be possibly the longest form version of Total War ever in terms of conquest. Like there's going to be way more to do than just a flat map of painting it until you conquer it all. So they showed that, and then there's going to be a density scaling based on which map it is. So once you go from like the galactic scale to the planetary scale to fighting an actual battle, there's going to be things from, so this was already in Total War Warhammer, but there's going to be like, if you have ships in orbit in that system, that will give you abilities during your battle. That'll give you abilities during the battle on the map. So right now, if you play Total War Warhammer, you're probably familiar with that. If you play like Dark Elves, you have a Corsair ship on the shore nearby a place you're having a battle. When you go into that battle, you also have these special abilities on the right, like little bombard spells and stuff you can do. I imagine it'll look like that. But the other thing that comes into play is like the terrain density will affect the battle a lot, because they wanted to bring in the fact that cover is a big thing in Warhammer 40k. And so unlike Total War in the past, where the terrain was just visual and you ran across the map and fought each other, this is going to be like, well, if this is a high density map, you go in and it's a city or a hive. And so there's like nowhere for you to have great big units of stuff marching across. You are getting cover with units. You are moving through streets. You are going up and down buildings. And then some of the terrain is like fully interactive. So the destructive firepower in the 40k universe will be shown off when you have guys with heavy weapons or dreadnoughts or tanks or something, and they're blowing off chunks of buildings. So, and then it will be permanent, like that chunk will be gone from the building. but then there are other terrain types that are going to be arid. You're going to be on the wastes outside of a hive that's just like desert or whatever, and a battle might take place there. And then if you have ships in orbit and you're, say, the Space Marines, that might give you an advantage. You might be able to drop Marines down into a particular landing zone and have them participate in the battle. So it was like, this is going to be, it's still going to feel like Total War, but it's going to be so much more to do, I think, than standard one flat map conquer stuff. So
I kind of wonder how it's going to work in terms of like your army composition, or in terms of like, you know, because right now in Total War, your max stack size has always been like 20. Well, how does that compare to, you know, when you're bringing entire, you know, battalions of soldiers? I mean, Space Marines, maybe 20 works, it makes sense, but if you're playing Tyranids,
guard,
or guard, it seems kind of weird to have to like limit your army size to 20. And then like your opponent limits theirs to 20, and then maybe you can have an ally nearby with another leader leading another group of up to 20 to help participate. I don't know. I wonder if like different unit types are going to take up more or less partial slots in an army. Like, I think it would make sense if like you have a dreadnought takes up a slot, and then you've got, you know, 4 units of termagants take up a slot, you know, something like that. I mean, I guess you can mess around with the numbers of like models in a unit to kind of you know, make up for that, but I don't know. It's just
well, one thing
I think if they're trying to be innovative, like I think they can break, similar to how you know, Games Workshop did with their stat system in this last edition. They went above and beyond their 10, you know, stat cap. They could, you know, Total War, you know, Creative Assembly could go beyond their normal recipe and actually make some bigger changes here.
You know, that's interesting, because during the discussion, again, I encourage people to go watch the video in your own time. It's long, but what was really neat is Creative Assembly actually said they drew a lot of inspiration from Games Workshop themselves, not just like the art and the lore and everything, but even how they do business. And so one of the things, this was a little cheeky, is they wanted to give us a hint at stuff that's coming for all of these games, for Medieval 3, Total War Warhammer, and then Total War Warhammer 40k. So they did a rumor engine.
Preview event, a rumor engine.
He did a rumor engine because this guy was like, I love that Games Workshop every week does this rumor engine, so we're going to do it. So they showed these grayscale clips of little units that are coming to the games without telling us what they are. I was like, that's pretty cool. But again, the guys who were designing this one were really 40k nerds. And then when they went to the art team, so that was most of what they were showing off, is how far the art's come. Like the planet biomes are all designed now. And then most of them are now skinned. And so it was a matter of how to generate hybrid versions, and then how do the units interact when they're there. So all they didn't show the units doing much, but they showed like an actual like Astra Militarum, like brigade or whatever. There were a bunch of infantry units just standing there. And so we were getting a sense of the scale. The maps are pretty big, like the battle maps. And then there was some guy with a chainsaw just swinging it for some reason. They didn't know why that was happening. But yeah, that'll be interesting to see, because they said there's going to be times where you have very few units because it feels like a spec ops or a kill team type thing. And then other times where it's a huge 40k type battle where there's companies of guys out there at a time. So now that might just be handled by allowing more stacks to fight at a time, because right now you're always capped at like 4 stacks of 20. Maybe that, or maybe something you talked about where certain units will count as less than one unit card, essentially. So we'll see how they do that. But in terms of the worlds and the maps, it said we are in good hands. It looked fantastic. And then I guess they've got a new UI. They are utilizing a lot of AI and DLSS type stuff, but it's actually allowing the Total War engine to not be as cumbersome as it always has been. For those who are familiar with, whenever you see benchmark tests for a new CPU or a new GPU, there's always this library of games that they pick from. Somehow every company always picks the same exact 10 games to do the benchmark. I don't know how they work that out, but they do. Whenever Total War is featured, they always have to put an asterisk by it, because Total War is this rare game that will throttle both your CPU and GPU at the same time, because it's trying to render tons of graphics across a very high detailed map. and then it needs the CPU because there's a million little independent AI agents running around on a battlefield. And so it's a hog to your system. Apparently they have solved that, and Total War Warhammer 40k will actually be easier for current computers than Total War Warhammer was or is. So that's how they were able to, I guess, go into having much more than just one map. Now they've got star systems with planets, and each planet will be its own thing. So we'll see how that goes. I'm excited. I've loved Total War forever. Obviously, being in the Warhammer universes further is exciting. Those of us who like Age of Sigmar hope they eventually do one there. But
yeah, I would hope that'd be the next installment of like Total War Warhammer. The fantasy side of things would be like, well, we're following the path of of old world. We're following the path of actual fantasy. We're doing the end times.
Yep,
it's the next logical step, right?
It is. Oh. It really is. And if it's the case that they're changing kind of the mortal realms, that actually might make it easier for a company like Creative Assembly to come up with a game. So, yeah. But anyway, back to the tabletop world. We had the preview event, I guess you could call it that, the unboxing of the starter set for Warhammer 40k 11th called Armageddon.
Yes, Armageddon. So, I mean, not only was it, it's kind of a setting for all of the edition, they actually involved a lot more different factions in this kind of event than they normally do. Because usually it's a box set that's like, here's your 2 factions, that starts the edition, and we're done. But this one, they also did, in addition to the Orks, they also did Sisters, they did Astra Militarum, they did some Inquisitorial stuff. Like, they did a lot more with this. I mean, we had 2 new named commissars, both Graves and Yarrick returning. A lot of stuff.
Yep.
The box set for the edition launch, though, Space Marines versus Orks, is on a mixed bag, right? I think it's hints at some interesting things going on that we can kind of infer, right? So Orks, an army that's been pretty out of date. A lot of the models are from early 2000s. Plastic, sure, but really showing their age.
Yep.
We've had some Ork updates that have really shown the updated aesthetic, and even just core units were really failing to stand next to those, right? Like the Beast Snagga Boys, while admittedly I think was released in the wrong system, they were an updated version of these Orks that were kind of captured the feel, but also fixed some of their proportionality problems, right? Like if you look at Boys, the previous plastic boy kit, it's like the weird, like, what do you call it, scoliosis posture, where they're shaped like J's, the gorilla Orks, giant head. The heads are as big as their torsos, and these are guys who are supposed to be muscled. Like, why is their head so big? Like, I don't know. The aesthetic was showing its age. Let's just say that. Well, the new ones look phenomenal.
The
boys sculpting and the musculature.
What's funny is, like, you and I were at the Adepticon preview event, and they gave us free models for attending. Like, it was a Space Marine and it was an Ork boy in the same pack. And so, like, I've got an Ork boy that I'm working on right now, Bad Moon colors, right? And one thing I noticed is not only is the detail so much better. So it's funny, is people saw at this Armageddon unboxing, they put a Primaris Marine or an Intercessor next to a boy, and the Intercessor's bigger. And people are like, oh, the Orks are tiny. It's like, no, they made the Orks what they're supposed to be, which was bigger than a human, not bigger than a Space Marine, for an Ork boy, for just a boy. But then they showed the knob, and he's
huge.
Huge. And then they showed the war boss, and he's bigger still.
Well, they showed the big boss, and then they showed the war boss. And so you've got these different scale size of like what Orks can be as they fight and live longer. The boys, perfect.
Yeah, now the heads on the Ork boys look so much better. They're properly proportioned. The musculature on the Orks is what I think I've liked the most about the new design. Like, they don't have hands that are bigger than their biceps. It's now like the arm is scaled the way it's supposed to be. A lot of people, and I agree, is that aesthetically the Orks win in this box set. in terms of the design. But I mean, Marines are Marines are Marines. And so all we got with these Marines were like kind of just updates to old kits to mix the intercessor scale with some old armor patterns. And that was really it.
Which, I mean, I think was a little disappointing, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, the new intercessor kit is basically the old intercessor kit.
It is.
So, but what's weird is there's a non-push fit intercessor kit that exists out there
Already. Yep.
This is going to be a push fit intercessor kit that will only exist for a short period of time. Part of these starter boxes,
yeah.
And then they'll do a new standalone kit with mixed armor types and be multi-part, but then replace the old one or not. I don't know. It's weird. It's a weird thing to do. It was weird timing. The intercessor kit didn't exist for very long. It didn't make any meaningful updates to the intercessor kit. It didn't add, your standard tactical loadouts of one special, one heavy, kind of weapon to make. They didn't do anything. It just said, here's more armor types mixed into the unit. Okay. While people were asking for that, this isn't a meaningful change. I don't
know. And so while I expect they'll get a standalone kit that's got 1 million bits, because the tactical squad / intercessor squad always had 1 million bits.
Yep.
And they did update the tactical squad a lot during its time. So them getting a new one isn't surprising. It's like kind of disappointing when you put a monopose push fit version in the starter box that's only going to be so useful because everybody who owns Space Marines already has intercessors, and you're going to make a standalone box that's so.
I mean, people that joined the game in 9th edition already have intercessors.
Right.
That wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they did. And then the characters, so we already have a captain. We already have a librarian. We already have ancients. The only really new thing was the jump chaplain. And then, which is fine. The updated land speeder does look better, but that's all it is.
But they made a big point to say, hey, we're getting rid of the old land speeder because we've got all these new speeders. We've got the land speeder storm and the javelin, whatever, all these 3 or 4 new types of land speeders. And they're like, oh, by the way, we're bringing back the old land speeder we got rid of. Hey, everybody who got rid of your land speeders, we got to bring them back now because we decided to bring them back. Like, what a weird thing to do.
Yeah, it's well, what's funny is that kind of happened to Skaven and Stormcast.
Yeah.
They did that big, like, almost calendar where they're like, here's these units that are going away. And so everyone was like, shit. And then they released some of them again, like just new. And so that's really what that land speeder was. I mean, the kit was long overdue for an update, but you told people it was going away forever, and it really did. Now, I actually really like, this is controversial, the Vanguard veterans. And the reason is because I have heard through the grapevine, don't know if it's true yet, take all rumors as false, that they're getting a standalone version of the box that'll have all these extra bits so you can bling them out. People think these look kind of plain. Okay. I think for me, for Space Marines, unless I'm all in on a specific chapter where I'm getting that chapter's unique stuff, like let's say I'm really into Space Wolves, so I want their Wolfguard version of Terminators. Well, you can get that, but for any kit that is shared across all the Space Marines, I would rather the kit's a little bit vanilla so I can decide what it looks like. That's what I get from these. And again, it's a starter box, people, so they're like kind of monopose. They're always going to be that. They're always going to be push fit in a starter box. If you go to I think the Space Marines overall were like a C minus. Like,
I think people's complaint about them was more that they were so similar to the very recently released Jump Pack intercessors that, like, when you visually look at them side by side, it looks like somebody put a couple of bits on the intercessor kit.
Yeah, it looks like a mild kit bash.
These are now Vanguard veterans. Like
the only difference is like they've got power swords.
Right.
That's it. And like a laurel or an extra purity seal. But that's kind of what I expect. I mean, we'll see when they get their own kit if it's a little better, because they did that with Blade Guard vets too. Now on the Orc side, 100% of these are just flat out new. Like, yes, boys are a redo, but I mean, the aesthetic of these Orcs is so good because they not only tipped the cap to nostalgia by giving them like spiky helmets and like kind of some of their like pirate feel where they had the like Corinthian helmet with the spike on it. But they have that very modern, excuse me, they have that very modern GW aesthetic where the detail's very sharp, the musculature is formed really well, things that are supposed to be pokey or stabby look pokey or stabby. And then they incorporated enough seriousness where the orcs look brutal, but then they still have the cheeky stuff like that Grot Orderly following around the Pain Boy is just hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
he's carrying on a pwn saw.
He's got a little mask and a saw, and he's like, all right, let's go do this. Like, and they made the banners look kind of old school. Did you notice that? So if you remember when they used to, so GW had these phases. So they had way back in the day of like second ed 40k, they would just put a banner pole on a guy and then include a sticker in the pack that you literally folded over the banner pole. That was it. Then they started trying to sculpt them, but they were metal banners. So they were like awkwardly shaped and wrapped around the pole and whatever. And then they went in the plastic phase where it's just like full plastic print, straight banner. Then they were like, we're not going to do banners anymore, whatever. You do it yourself if you want a banner. Now they've like hybridized the two. So now you've got these sculpted plastic banners, but they've shaped them a little more organically. Like they have some weight to them like the metal ones used to. We see it with the Ancient for the Marines. And then this War Boss has one. And then the banner knob. Like that's a really cool way to do it. Sometimes they're leaving it blank so you can put a decal on or paint it. Sometimes they're sculpting it if you want to really just push to the nines. One of my favorite kits, I mean, the Orcs stole the show. Let's be real here. And like, I think the Big Mech DACA rig was like the one everybody was really on.
Yeah.
Me, as someone who in like the early 2000s played Gorka Morka, for anyone who remembers that game, loves that new war track because that was where the war track was introduced, was in Gorka Morka, and it was kind of derpy, but it was different enough that people were playing it, crossed over into 40k, but we didn't get an updated one forever. It was I don't even know if it had rules for the longest time. I think it was just like track and buggy were listed as the same thing. And like now we've got this, and that looks super cool. It still harkens to the old one, but it's very updated. It's got 1,000 missiles on it. I don't know what those are for, but that's great.
Which is interesting because they're basically getting an attack bike to go along with their bikers, and then Space Marines are going to be losing theirs.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird. Like it's weird decision making, and I think that's part of what we're kind of inferring a little bit from some of these updates we're seeing, right? Because like there's obviously going to be more stuff, right?
Yeah.
The stuff we got, take it or leave it, whatever. The work's definitely one in terms of this release box. There's more coming out alongside all of this, right? I still kind of expect to see maybe new war bikes for orcs coming. They kind of hinted at that a little bit, where it's like, oh, the war track would go really good alongside some bikes, but they have bikes already. I'm hoping for new ones. Space Marines, I've heard they're going to be Outrider updates. To kind of
I've heard that too.
Kind of bulk out some of that side of Space Marines, the fast attack side.
Yeah,
this new land speeder would go great with some bikes, right? If bikes could actually make it to being meta, right? If they actually did something in the game instead of being chain swords, fast chain swords.
Yep.
We've got that right. We got jump pack guys, right?
Yeah.
But I think what we're seeing is some shifting in how they're planning on doing some of their design. What leads me to think of that is kind of these Eradicator kits that we saw, we didn't talk about yet, that are running those heavy bolters. They are a specific unit already. Currently, Eradicators can take Meltas, right? They're Melta Eradicators. And I think, do they even have, with Melta guns or something in their name? They might have that already.
They were just called Eradicators because they technically had 3 different Melta profiles they could choose from.
And they got flattened, right, into just like one profile plus 1 out of the 5 gets a Melta, or 1 out of the 3 gets a Melta or something.
Something like that.
Multi-Melta. Yeah. But I think what we're going to see is we're going to see Devastators potentially go away. Yep. I think we're going to potentially see Tactical Marines go away. And as to replace them, we've got these other dedicated rifleman units, i.e. the intercessors. We've got your short range intercessors, the ones with the flamers, which are the Infernus Marines. And then for your heavy weapon support units, it's just going to be Eradicators. I could see them coming out with, a major update to the Eradicator kit that makes it so that you've got 4 or 5 different heavy weapons, or maybe there's 2 heavy weapon versions of the, or of this kit. So one of them's like the long range support eradicator, which is plasma cannons and las cannons and missile launchers, and then you've got the short range support eradicators, your meltas and your heavy bolters, and then maybe a autocannon or something, right?
Well,
you could see like these are your heavy weapon teams.
One, I think so. I think overall, and we've talked about this. We talked about how we wanted to see it, but we didn't know what it would look like ever, and it was just theory. But I think they reached a point of like extreme bloat with Space Marines, where you had all the OG or Firstborn stuff, then you had all this Primaris stuff, and design-wise, a lot of it overlapped and was redundant, or it had gone so far into the ridiculous that they had to like rein it back in. Like whatever the hell that missile unit was just absurd looking. Where it had like,
man.
5 range.
I kind of forgot about that.
They had like 5 range finders and 10 missiles stacked. It just looked so silly. And so I think they reined it back in. They realized people like the scale of Primaris. They like the detail of the newer power armor, but they wanted it to still look like their Space Marines. And so I think GW is like they're pulling a Band-Aid a bit, maybe long overdue, and maybe it's only going to be partial, but it's like they're reining it back in. They're going to trim some of the redundancy and make the lineup a little cleaner. And so while aesthetically it wasn't a big wow factor to update the kits like this, I think you're right. I think instead of coming up with new names for every single weapon variant they're going to have, like eradicators, fulminators, eliminators, constipators, whatever they were going to come up with, they're now going to be like, okay, the heavy weapon guys are going to be eradicators. What are they using now? And so there's a couple ways they can do that. They can release a standalone kit that has a bunch of weapons in it. Or I looked actually at what they did with Horus Heresy when they did their version of Devastators, or whatever they called them during the Legion days. So you make a Marine kit that comes with 1 or 2 weapons in it, and then you release a box for like $30 that has the other 5 weapon types or something. Like that's just a weapon loadout. And you make the Marines design in a way so you can just swap the fists and the weapons, and they can go out there with a different. However they do it, I think they're trying to clean that up and just decide heavy weapon Marines now are going to be eradicators. Certain armor patterns going to be terminators. And so maybe that'll be one way they do it. I think this new land speeder with the previous land speeder, now you're going to have a variety of different speeders. Whatever is going to happen to the Outriders, now you'll have a variety of bikes, but you'll get rid of having 2 versions of everything in terms of Firstborn and Primaris. You'll now just have this one version of it with a variety. It will look a little different. I think it was a hard move. It was a risky move because you got people who've been loyal to the stuff forever. But we did enjoy. I enjoyed the size of the Primaris Marines. I enjoy the painting, the armor better. But like it was so messy and so convoluted. Like
I think it's still a risky move now too, because if they are trying to clean things up, there's going to be a hard choice, right?
Yep.
Like you're going to have to get rid of some Primaris kits that they've released recently. Like they didn't touch the Inceptors. No, those are the Moon Shoes. What would you say?
The suppressors.
Suppressors
with the Moon Shoes and the autocannon.
Yes,
they never touched
the Moon Shoe and autocannon guys. 3-man kit forever. Never got an update. I don't think, did they get released on their own? Nope. I don't think they did.
They were available in the Vanguard box set.
Right. Well, they've never been able to take them in units bigger than 3. They've never had rules that have been consequential. The Eliminators is another unit that's weird. It's in a weird spot. Pretty sure you cannot reinforce, upgrade from 3 to 6 on the Eliminator unit. So you're stuck with 3 guys, one of which is the sergeant, who has a special weapon that gives the other 2 guys a bonus. Like, it's odd. It's a weird thing to do. Why is there options in that box, by the way? Well, slight tangent, to make one of the guys not a sergeant? Why is that even a thing? Because the unit isn't big enough to not include a sergeant. You can't double it. Right. And then make, you got one, box is included as a sergeant. The other box you buy, you don't make a sergeant, so you make a unit of 6. Can't do that with these guys.
Nope.
And so it's like, well, there's a weird unit there that never got updated, never got touched, never got decent rules. The bunker, which we heard is going away, right? Is it the bunker or was it the turret? I'm sorry, the turret I think is going away.
The fire strike turrets, yeah.
Could have just done something with that, but they decided not to.
Yeah.
And then it'll be going away. Like, I don't know. For me, it's after a certain period of time, your investment, your monetary investment you made is no longer a consideration, right? It's like, oh, I bought this 15 years ago and it's finally going away. Well, the money I spend, whatever, it doesn't matter to me anymore. But like talking within 5 years, something you bought and you wanted to play, you thought it was really cool. They released brand new. Here's a brand new thing. I bought maybe a few of them, and then a few editions later, like, yeah, we don't feel like supporting that anymore. It's just out of the game. Legends, you can't play it in tournaments. It's like I'm not a fan of that. If you give me a way to play with my toys in a different capacity, right? Like I can substitute it, whatever. But there are units that they're getting rid of that don't have. I'm like, if the Eradicators have a las cannon variant, and you say you want to cut the Eliminators, I'm not going to go to the tabletop and be like, well, you see these gigantic tough six, Gravis guys that are wielding these las cannons. These tiny little Phobos guys that are all crouching in camo cloaks, they're going to proxy for them. Yeah. And you'd be like, well, they're not the same silhouette. It's like, yeah, don't worry about it. They're not even the same base size. Don't worry about it. Like, it's a problem. Like it's a stretch. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That sucks. I don't like to see that.
Yeah.
But again, if it's old kits that are being replaced with new kits and they're 1-to-1 directly, it's like, sure, fine. I'm fine with that.
I think this is a process they probably should have started earlier. They waited too long. They were afraid to let go of the old stuff and bring in the new, and then they didn't know where they wanted to go with the new, and now they're trying to do all of that at once. So it is going to be risky. I think in the long run, it will be better overall for the Space Marine lineup. For people who are talking about, well, they've always had this thing and now they're not going to have it. Well, because there's rumors of like the Razorback and the Whirlwind and all that stuff going away. That anything on the Rhino chassis that isn't the Rhino itself is apparently going away. We don't know that for sure, but that's a rumor. 10,000 years have gone by. Like, you don't think the military technology or the organization of each army would change? Like, that's ridiculous. Like, I know you don't want to let it go. Play Horse Heresy then if you want that old stuff forever. From the sounds of it, some things will continue, some things will be replaced with the new. I do think it's risky the way they did it. I think they waited too long to make the changes, and now, like I said, they're trying to do it all at once. I think in the end it will be better. Right now, this is going to be a risky launch a little bit in terms of the Space Marine fans, and that's your biggest fan base. That's your biggest player base. Everybody who's ever played tabletop games ever owns a Space Marine army. So, like, that's which on the video game side, by the way, there have been some updates on Dawn of War 4. I haven't kept up that much with it, but yeah, apparently that's supposed to be out this year.
Wow.
I'm go with it.
I wonder how different that's going to be to Total War Warhammer. I wonder if that's going to be too similar. I mean, they're very different RTSs, right? They're very, very different. I don't know. I think it's interesting.
Well, they're apparently trying to time these video game releases alongside releases in the tabletop game that line up. So the announcement of like Space Marine 3, for example, came after the success of Space Marine 2, and Titus came back to 40k in this new second company captain 500 worlds thing. And then there's supposed to be something like that for Dawn of War 4, where there's going to be a release that kind of lines up, and so people who are in that mood already have it.
What's in Dawn of War 4 that could line up to be a tabletop release?
I know.
I thought it was kind of a lot of existing stuff, right?
Well, I know the Blood Ravens, like Gabriel Angelos and stuff, will be in it. I mean, how could you not? But whether or not that means they'll get an official 40k faction, they've only been Forge World till now. But they could. I mean, all they would really have to do is like make a character or two, make a sprue that's an upgrade for kits. Here's a detachment, and have it come alongside the video game. With Space Marines, it's really easy for them to bring new rules, because we've heard rumors for 11th edition of stuff like Carcharodons and all these obscure Forge World only chapters getting rules. It's like they're not going to get a full codex. The way they do this is just you release a character, you release an upgrade sprue, you release a detachment. That's a weekend. They do that. Now that army's got its own unique little thing. Pretty brilliant, really. But I don't know all the details. I know Dawn of War 1 and 2 were both great. Dawn of War 3 had potential and sucked, and then they just abandoned supporting it. So
so fast. It was so fast they gave up on it.
Yep. But for this, though, like, so I don't play orcs, going back to Armageddon. But it's interesting is like lore-wise, there's a lot happening. So they talked about a couple of things on the website, and they showed off artwork. And while our Malarian artwork hasn't paid off in model form yet, Games Workshop rarely commissions artwork for specific named characters without it leading to something. And whether that's a Black Library book or a model or both, it usually pays off somewhere. And one of the things they talked about was, Gazkul, of course, is coming back. So that's no surprise. Gazkul has a big, impressive model right now. He is what he is. He's becoming this era's version of a Primorc. For people who remember the Beast, this Primorc being that the Imperium had to fight during the Great Crusade, and then that others had to fight later, I think. But he's essentially like a Primarch level being for the orcs, and nothing's been like that for the orcs ever since. Gazkul is now approaching that territory where he's become big, he's become strong, he's got influence, he's developed wild technology. And one of the ways he's done it is through two things. One, either this orc big mech or a circle of big mechs known as Orchimedes. and then Nazdrag. So Nazdrag is a Bad Moon war boss who has existed in the lore going back to 2nd edition, only ever had a model once, and it was terrible. And it was literally a throwaway. It was like back of the White Dwarf, end of 2nd edition. They were like, oh, by the way, Nazdrag. And it just showed his bare metal. And he was in the classic disco pose that every model was then, right? But he's never really had rules since. He's never got an updated model. He kind of disappeared because at the time he was just another mega armored war boss. Well, they've fleshed out his lore some. And so he is an orc who's very smart. They said he can speak Imperial Gothic in a way that was like unnerving to anyone who tried to interact with him diplomatically. He's also one of the wealthiest orcs. So Bad Moons are known for having the most teeth. So they're the wealthiest faction. They have nice equipment. And his resources, he survived some major event where they thought he was killed. He made Gazkul's good graces and kind of became a part of his inner circle. So while he's still a warlord of a Bad Moon clan, he's also in like Gazkul's inner circle. If Gazkul's like, Horus, this guy's like Erebus. Like he's made that inner circle that makes everybody else uneasy. But with him and along with Orchimedes, they developed this incredible technology where they can like sort of assemble these orc ships to make this giant teleporting device and get like anywhere in the galaxy. And it's super dangerous because they just appear with heavy defenses around them and whatever. But the artwork they showed for Nazdrag was very different than anything we've had from him before. Instead of just showing another mega armored orc, he had this chainmail hood and this like sort of a bionic eye, and then they described him in a way that was really different. I have a feeling they've got a model plan for him, and the orcs are not going to be done with whatever this initial release is.
Well, I think they in that article I'm thinking about when you're talking about, wasn't there like a handful of different orc named characters from the lore that they were like given new like artwork for?
Yeah, 100%.
It's like, I think there's lots going on with the orcs then.
Like in between the 1 grot a day they showed us for 5 days.
I was super disappointed by that, by the way. I thought it'd be so much more. Oh,
yeah.
Sorry.
Well, all it was they showed us 5 of the 10 grots that come in the starter box. Like, so Lore of Armageddon, Gazkul's grand plan, and it shows this crazy teleporting device that he's made. 10 custom kill cruisers that channel a gateway through the warp. and it moves like a shock attack gun or whatever. But then it shows this artwork for Nazdrag, and then it shows Snickrot, who we already have a new model for. It shows
is the article called Gazkul's Grand Plan revealed or whatever?
Yeah,
the one. Okay.
It's part 3. Yeah, so it not only express this incredible technology they've developed to teleport around, because it's basically a fleet of ships that can just like sort of disassemble and come together to make a gateway, and then they come through and then they disassemble and then they're a full fleet again. So it's really hard to like fight because orc ships are dangerous. And then it shows some artwork for Archimedes, but again, there's no certainty that he's an individual and not a group. And then no one's ever got, so I don't expect a model for him, but they show this Urgrok Glitztooth. He was someone who stayed behind and held a hive in the Armageddon sector when Gazkul left the last time. So he's been there and he's been a problem. And then it shows this artwork for Nazdrag. Both of them look unique enough that I feel like they might get models. I mean, why not give the orcs some more named characters, some more ways to play? We've seen Games Workshop drive their games a little bit more towards what other game systems do, where you have these solos who just drastically alter the way your army plays, or at least a unit. So I wouldn't be surprised if those guys have models coming. I think, which we've heard very little of, that when the proper launch for Space Marines and Orks come in 11th edition, which the last few editions of Age of Sigmar and 40k or anything to go by, it'll be about 3 months. Because they give us like the 60 to 90 day window to play with just the starter box, and that's it, and a bunch of indexes. I feel like orcs in particular have a lot more coming we don't know about. But which if they won the starter box half, then they might very well win the Codex half too.
Yeah, I fully expect that. I mean, I fully expect to see, like, I think the boys and the knobs, in the unit was just a precursor, right? I think we're going to have the fact that the current boy unit is just sort of an all-rounder. Basically, their guns are just extra on top of what they want to do, which is run up and chop, right? The fact that it's got a knob in there, who's a big, leader of the unit, but there's just units
he's
of
on
knobs
a different base size.
too.
He's on a different base size.
And there's just units of knobs. Like they didn't get rid of that. Is that there's a middle ground there between the bosses and the boys. There's the knob class. They have a unit already where you can just take knobs, and they are also aged. They're showing, outdated aesthetics and stuff, just like the boys did. I wouldn't be surprised if they got a whole new knob kit. I wouldn't be surprised if the upscaled knobs means they need a different, a mega knob kit. And then alongside of all that, you've got a slew of new characters that come with. You've got the new biker boss named guy who would love to lead some new bikes, because while he's by himself as like a solo a lone operative, like which means he can't join a unit, but he's protected by a unit nearby.
Yeah.
Like the old bike kit is showing its age. Like there's a lot of stuff that's just old. I wouldn't be surprised if it's like, okay, here's the starter box, here's all the stuff updated. All the old stuff, 3 to 5 new kits gets dropped, in the couple weeks after the launch box, or at least it gets revealed in those couple weeks that more is coming. I would not be surprised at all.
Well, because in the previous edition, even Tyranids got more than everyone expected. It was like, they got all the starter box is always new models, cool, but they're push fit, they're single post. But it is still a way when you buy into that you can like get updates to your old kits or get new models for your army. And then when the Codex dropped, they got a slew of other things.
Right. So Leviathan came out, and you had the new Tyrant, Neuro Tyrant. You had the new Carnifex. You had the new all the new Gaunts. Basically two units in there, and then a third one came outside of it, which was the Termagants.
The Termagants and the Neurogants came in that.
Right.
Neurogants were entirely new.
Right.
You got the Psychophage. You got the
Von Ryan's Lictors.
The Leapers,
Leapers, that's one.
And then in their standalone release, they got the Norn Emissary / Norn Assimilator. They got the Biovore Pyrovore kit that was brand new. They got Harmagants on their own. They got new Gene Stealers, by the way, a totally updated kit for them that looks miles better. So it was, but that's my point is like,
don't forget about the Death Leaper and the Lictor and the other
Neurolictor.
Neurolictor. Like, yes, exactly. They got a ton of new kits alongside Leviathan. I would fully expect to see that here happen with the Orks. Right? It's not just like here's the box, goodbye.
Yeah, no, I expect that there'll be this box, and then some of those things in the box will get released later standalone, that if they're not sharing a sprue or whatever. And then I expect 5 to 8 entirely new Ork kits or updated Ork kits. So they really take that. That's why I think they have that 3-month window now before the codex. It's like you really give people time, because if, let's say, you're an Ork player or a Marine player, or you want to get into either army, that's so many new kits to buy. So they have to give you that, like, that gap, I guess. But I expect Orks are just going to get so much new. It's what I expect to see from like Ogre Maw tribes. It's going to be such a massive overhaul to the range that, this isn't it. The starter box, they did great. These new kits for the Orks look spectacular, but they're going to get more. Yeah.
That makes me wonder then, speaking of ogres, is if they aren't going to get an update until the next edition. And if they do, they'll get maybe they'll be in the edition starter box. And if they're in that edition starter box, maybe they get this treatment. That'd be super interesting.
They're supposed to be. Well, they haven't gotten their update in 4.0 yet. Right. And the rumor was supposed to be that they're getting a big release in 4.0. It's the dwarves.
Maybe they'll just get like an updated index in 4, and they won't even bother giving them a codex or a battle tome. Right? And they say, hey, we're not getting a battle tome this edition, just like dwarves aren't getting a battle tome edition. Maybe the next edition starter box is going to be Dwarven Holds versus Ogre Maw tribes. Boom, here you go. Update both at the same time. Massively overhaul them. Because I mean, if that's the case, like that like the human-y kind of side of things are in disarray. Cities 2 versus Stormcast, like they aren't all aligned anymore. Maybe while they're all in disarray, they focus on a different conflict.
Well, while Stormcast are like the face of Age of Sigmar, it's, I don't know if, and while they're very popular in terms of player numbers, they're not quite Space Marines, really, in my mind.
And honestly, we don't want them to be. We don't want them to just be Space Marines. And that's why some of those rumors where they were saying, oh, yeah, they're going to just be Space Marines, people aren't on board for.
No, and we've seen Games Workshop, of course, is willing to make adjustments to what the crowds hate. And so when it was like, oh, you're going back to Armageddon, but there's no Steel Legion, and then GW was like, okay, we're making Steel Legion, so here's a sketch.
Oh, we didn't think about that. You're right. Okay.
Yeah.
Steel Legion's coming.
Because you have to, and it's funny, is I just think it's not like they were ignoring Steel Legion. It was, we just did a massive update for Cadia and a massive update for Krieg. So now we have to come up with a whole, so I just think it was hard to fit that in. But
to be fair, if you chose that setting, choose the guys that are in that setting, though.
Yep.
It's like, how did you oopsie your way through that and not think like, oh my gosh, we brought back Yarick, we're not bringing back Steel Legion.
Well, and there's the funny thing is they knew probably when the Krieg set came out that Armageddon was coming. Like they probably already knew. And so when I think of that in Age of Sigmar, though, while the Stormcast are iconic, I feel like they could get away with any army being in their starter boxes, really. Like in 40k, you have to have Space Marines as part of it. But like, I feel like in Age of Sigmar, you don't have to have Stormcast. Now, there were rumors that it might be Cities of Sigmar going forward, but some people then dispelled that because they're getting so much soon that, like, well, are you also then going to give them more in that they don't have any old kits, right? Like, so it's like, I think it'll be Stormcast again, but if it weren't, what you just proposed is interesting. Kozilid Holds and then some other faction getting updated, like Ogres or whatever. That could be possible. I've heard rumors that the Dwarfs might be waiting for their major update till the next edition. But everyone else is supposed to get a Battle Tome this edition. And if Ogres are coming, they've got a while now. They've got about a year where they could get their big update. I hope so. But what's interesting about that is the General's Handbook's supposed to come soon, often overshadowed by the fact that we now know 40k 11th is coming in June. So are they going to give us the General's Handbook before? And then it just gets, the interest in it gets wiped out by 11th, 40K? Are they going to give it to us after as like an afterthought when no one's thinking about it because they're all in 40K?
I think it'd be smart of them to release it 2 to 3 months prior to 40K 11th coming out. Because that would be enough time for people to get interested in that. I mean, there's rules and rumors and whatever being previewed for the 11th edition, but I think like that'd be enough time people could sink their teeth in and then be ready for 11th afterwards. I don't think it would feel like it was coming too quickly on the heels, you know?
Okay. Well, so they told us in that unboxing that the Armageddon box will be here in June.
Yeah, you're right. So they have to do it now, and we already know it's not within 3 weeks.
So Generals, now it sounds like the Sunday not preview for Armageddon pre-order or whatever will be like either last weekend of May or first weekend of June. So everyone's expecting end of June is when Armageddon actually arrives.
Sure.
But still, that means they would have to give us the General's Handbook like now.
If the General's Handbook was coming before, they would have to put it on Sunday's preview next week.
Right. The only other option is you wait for a month after Armageddon lands in that 3-month window before the first codexes come. You then drop the General's Handbook in there and you feature it on the Warcom thing for a week. Otherwise, it's just going to be this weird afterthought.
Yeah.
And that's really a shame because it sounds like it's going to really shake up the way a lot of like scoring works and every faction's going to get some new stuff. So like, I don't know. That's us, of course, because that's like our favorite setting, but you know.
Yeah.
Food for thought.
Food for thought. Food for stomach. I could stand to go get some.
I could stand for some food. I could stand for some food. I could sit for some food too.
Yeah. All right. Let's eat.
Let's go stand for food. Yep.